All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Gnomon stream today. My name is Adam Hartel. I am a recruiter here at Gnomon, and it's my pleasure to be your host and to introduce our guest today. But before I do, I would like to thank Lenovo. Lenovo sponsors today's event and continues sponsoring events here at Gnomon and makes it possible for us to continue to provide free educational content to you. So we've got a great stream today. This is going to be with Framestore and our special guest Amanda Johnstone-Batt, creating innovative theme park rides of the future. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guest. Amanda Johnstone-Batt is currently CG supervisor within Framestore's rides division, where she applies her skills in CG and VFX in exciting state of theme park attractions and environmental media. Overseeing a team of artists, it's her responsibility to ensure the best tools and pipelines are developed and implemented, while also translating creative direction, maintaining an effective stream of dialogue from one artist to the next. Amanda has accrued an impressive raft of credits in the VFX sphere, working across major companies including Double Negative, DreamWorks, and Weta. She was most recently sequence supervisor on Star Trek Beyond. Other notable titles include Godzilla, for which she was sequence lead, Thor, The Dark World, and The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. To date, Amanda has been a part of 3 Oscar-nominated teams, The Curious Case, Avatar, and The Golden Compass. So an amazing guest today. And with that, I would like to say, Amanda, welcome to the Gnomon stream. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much. It's really wonderful to be here. I'm very excited to be spreading the gospel of rides and how awesome and fun all of this can be. So thank you very much also for accommodating my schedule. I am coming to you from London, although it probably doesn't look like it. So it's really wonderful to be able to have a virtual dialogue with people around the world right now.
Absolutely. And, we're all kind of used to this new reality, but I should say right off the top, guys, we're streaming an event globally from 3 different locations on the planet. So if we have any technical difficulties today, I would say just bear with us. I will, if I'm able to, I will let you guys know any instructions you might need to know, or just let you know if you need to hang in there. If anything happens, we usually recover very, very quickly. So thanks for your patience with kind of what the new normal is right now. But with that, I will hand it over to you, Amanda.
Oh, great. Thank you very much, Adam. Okay, cool. So as Adam said, my name's Amanda Johnstone-Batt, and I'm a CG supervisor at Framestore in their London office, and I'm seconded to the rides team. I've been working with them for about 3 years. And today I really want to talk to you about the creation of theme park rides, both in developing the stories and some of the challenges that we have to overcome during the process. We're also going to cover some case studies so that you can see where both visual effects and games workflows were used to achieve the final result. But before I do that, I think it's really important that you always ask who's talking to you today and what their background is. So I'm going to give you a little bit of information about who I am and why I'm here. I actually grew up in Los Angeles, and baby Amanda before she discovered hair dye and other fun toys. I grew up in Orange County, very close to Disneyland, and theme parks were kind of a regular part of life for us. If you've sort of grown up in the area too, you might know that a lot of the schools will do day trips to various roller coaster parks so that you can learn about physics. And that you can, Knott's Berry Farm was also one so that we could learn about Wild West history. I don't know, that was a little bit weird. During the summer, in kind of the 80s and 90s, my mom actually used to use Disneyland as a daycare service. So she would drop me off at about 9 a.m. and pick me up after work. I did not mind one bit, as I'm sure you can imagine. So at 18, it was really kind of natural for me and my friends to all find part-time jobs at Disneyland because it was just around the corner and they were hiring loads of young kids. So my friends got to run some of the churro stands or operate some of the rides. I had a slightly different job, and legally I'm not allowed to say what I did. But I did perform in a stage show called Phantasmic, and I became very close friends with some of your Disney favorites. Hopefully some of you guys can read between the lines there. And I did all of this actually while I was at the Art Institute as Bo Jensen's student. So he can probably tell you stories about me having to leave class in a hurry so that I could get down to Disneyland to go dance around a bit. I did this for about 2 years until my kind of final year of college, actually. And then I jumped into the visual effects industry. Now, I've been doing this for about 15 years now, and over that time, I've gotten to work on a number of movies around the world, including a couple of Oscar winners, which is always kind of nice. But a few years ago, I decided it was time to kind of branch out from doing pre-rendered visual effects media and really start to explore how entertainment could move beyond a flat screen in front of you, but rather start to envelop the audience. So this is where Framestore came into my life. In the industry, Framestore is known for its big budget visual effects films such as Gravity or the Harry Potter movies. And with about 3,000 employees in London, New York, Los Angeles, Chicago, Montreal, and Pune, India, we've kind of ballooned into this global force of creativity. And throughout its 30 years as a company, we diversify into other media-based arenas. 80s synth pop fans will probably like in the top left-hand corner of the screen, the Aha Take On Me music video was one of our very first, which is quite exciting. But really, over time, it's amazing to see how far and how fast technology has developed and how the demand for digital content keeps expanding across new platforms and new ways of telling stories. So as a result, we no longer consider ourselves a visual effects studio, but rather a creative studio. Whether we're creating something for a cinema screen, a television screen, a giant installation, a VR headset, or even a theme park ride, each platform is just another way for us to tell a visual story. So now to the obligatory house reel.
Yes, sorry to interrupt you there for a second, Amanda. We're just experiencing some doubling up on audio, which is something we probably just need to fix on our end.
Okay.
So just bear with us for a second, guys. I'm working with our producer off camera to fix that for you.
And timeline plays again. Whatever. So Adam, have you gone to, is it back now or fixed?
Miranda will let me know as soon as it's fixed.
Okay.
But in the meantime, we can continue to talk. And I actually did want to jump in because it's amazing that you guys did the Aha video. That's incredible.
I know.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
Way before my time, but still, it's a little piece of our history. That was one of the very first projects that Framestore ever did, and how they became a company, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, no, I was very, very young when I first saw that video. Actually, when it was being aired, and it blew my mind. And as a young kid who loved to draw, when I saw the what they essentially did with the live action from the camera and put those hand drawn frames over, my mind was blown. And I was instantly thinking, like, how did that happen? Yeah. I have to know. Somebody please tell me how they did this. So yeah.
And we didn't have breakdown reels back then, so you couldn't just go on YouTube and like learn the process. So now we have this.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm getting a message from our producer. How are we doing, Miranda? Okay, we're just going to test the audio here really quick. Okay. No problem. Yeah. Okay. So our producer's letting us know we're just going to kind of, she's going to work with Amanda to get her screen share up and running. For some reason, that has a little bit of a glitch with it. But in the meantime, guys, one of the things that Amanda mentioned was, working with Bo Jensen, who is our education lead for VFX. We just recently did a stream with him where we take about an hour together, and he talks about his VFX history, some of the really cool projects that he's worked on. In fact, on the first time we ever saw in the X-Men films the effect for Mystique when she transforms into different identities. That shape shifting effect was something that Bo worked on directly, and had to pioneer an entirely new visual effect just to accomplish what the director was asking of him. So I would definitely advise going and watching that stream at another time. We are currently streaming on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. And a great place if you want to go back and watch previous events. Of course, you can go to our Twitch channel and look at kind of the backlog of videos there. But if you go to our Facebook channel, I'm sorry, YouTube. If you go to YouTube and look for the Gnomon channel there, we've actually started cataloging and organizing by subject and whatnot the many different, well over 90 events that you can access on YouTube on the Gnomon channel. So if you've missed some in past years, chances are you're going to be able to go there and take a look at them. If you are new to our stream, if Gnomon is relatively new to you, and the kinds of disciplines that Gnomon is teaching and the world of VFX is new to you, you also can go to that channel, and it's a great place to learn. So you get to hear from about workflows from some of the artists that are working on our favorite films, games, and television programs. And just by watching them break down some of the amazing stuff they have to share and show, it's a great way to begin to understand how this world operates. And if that's something that you are passionate about and considering a career in, Gnomon can definitely help you in that regard. I'll mention it as we wrap up, but as we're just trying to address some technical issues right now, I should also mention that this Friday we will be doing a special informational stream with Gnomon's Director of Placement, Shannon Wiggins. Gnomon had a placement rate of 100% in the industry in 2018 and 97% last year. So Shannon's just going to be sharing about how we go about doing that, how we coach students into success. All right, so I'm getting word from Miranda that I think we're up and running again. Is there anything you want us to test? All right. We're just going to go to Amanda's screen share real quick, just to make sure that that's working properly. All right. Everything looking good? Okay, great. So we can just continue then? Okay, great. Everything good on your end, Miranda? Okay. All right, cool. Sorry for the hiccup, guys. Amanda, I will give it back to you. Thank you for your patience.
No worries. Sorry, it's probably my fault somewhere along the line. But again, back to the obligatory Framestore house reel. So here you go. And it gets me every single time that I do this one. Right. So many people
Right.
think
So many
the
people
attraction
think the attraction
begins
and industry begins and ends with
Universal.
Disney and Universal.
But in actuality, the attraction industry
theme
covers
parks
like Disney World here, water parks. This is actually a VR water slide, which I think might be the most terrifying thing I've ever heard of, but it's a thing. And if you guys want to check it out, it's ballastvr.com. But then, so the attraction industry also covers museums, like you saw in the house reel, and even a lot of the stuff that's in shopping malls, like the Void in uh, Disney Springs or Third Street Promenade. This one I think is also in Dubai. And really in 2018, the Disney Corporation was spending more money in attractions, external experiences like the Void, and even in cruise ships than all of the other areas of the company combined. So this includes ILM, Pixar, Marvel movies. All of those were completely out-trumped by the amount of money that they were spending just in their location-based entertainment sectors. We're actually a pretty global industry. It's not just kind of a United States thing. You can see we're sort of moving across the whole board. I'm going to go through, actually Asia is probably our highest growing market, with Dubai right behind it. I'm going to go through some of these really quickly, but then we're also going to put links in the chat. So if you guys have any questions about the business side, you can kind of see where all of these numbers are coming from and what the trends over the past 10 years have been. But to be honest, it's a pretty stable market for all of us right now, and we're incredibly busy, particularly since a lot of these rides are transitioning into media-focused ones. So let's see. For a number of years, Framestore immersive entertainment departments were already working on projects that could easily be considered attractions in their own right. For Samsung, our VR team created an in-store experience to simulate walking on the moon. This attraction takes place in a custom-designed simulator rig and inertial measurement unit spacesuit, which is really difficult to say sometimes. And that all registers the user's weight in real time, offsetting it to emulate the gravity of the moon's surface. And right now, there's only 2 of these in the world. There's one in New York, and I think there's one in Japan right now. Oh, and there's a third one that's in the lobby of our London building that kind of looks like a baby swing. It's very strange, but it's a tremendous amount of fun. Let's see, what else do we have? For VW, we did the Hyper Reality test drive in China, and that was a physical experience where you got inside of one of their new cars, and you actually had a stunt driver that would take you around an area the size of a football field, where different content was mapped with triggers to create action highlights as you moved through this VR experience. This custom trigger system ensured total synchronicity between the in-game and the real world for 6 vehicles that were running simultaneously around the same track. We've talked about the museum now a couple of times, but we did all of this for Google Cardboard, and it was a way for students to see what all of these dinosaurs would sort of look like in the flesh inside of their museums. So to continue this push towards creating more immersive experiences, a team was made to focus solely on the creation of themed attractions. And here we are doing some various serious work, making sure that we thoroughly test and check out the competition. So anyways, this group really kind of appealed to me because I could learn and experience new mediums without actually having to leave the visual effects industry as a whole. I could leverage my technical knowledge from film to create these larger developing stories that we're going to talk more about. Now, in art school back in my day, nearly 20 years ago, you really had to choose a track that was either visual effects or games, and it was a very binary decision with almost no overlap whatsoever. But these immersive groups are really starting to look to blend these fields together, and I think we're going to continue to see a lot of requirements now for generalists to have a real-time understanding, or for people in the gaming industry to also understand certain visual effects workflows. But let's start with how you create emotion and tell a story inside of a themed attraction. In the 90s, what you could do is you could paint a roller coaster black, stick a Batman logo on it, and you were themed to be a Batman ride. But today kind of requires a lot more thought and planning. So Framestore has positioned itself to be a part of any and all of the attraction making process. A client can approach us with a rough idea or an established storyline, and through a mixture of different possible storylines and new ride formats, we find the best combination to tell the story that couldn't be done previously in any other medium. This approach is often different than linear storytelling that you might have in film or television, and we really kind of consider it like immersive theater. The world that we're creating is all around you, and something should always be moving or engaging with you no matter where you look. Now with films, they're really a lot about character development and moving this character forward through the story. But in rides, we want to make the rider the central character. We want to give you a backstory, we want to give you a goal to accomplish, and we'll develop the world around you to make certain decisions on how to progress. Typically, we kind of look at this like a short film that's structured in 3 acts. Most commonly, this is all based on a hero's journey narrative, but where the rider is the hero. And you'll find 3 common story structures. We're either going to use an existing story, create a world experience for you to travel through, or we're going to reimagine a new storyline, kind of like a spinoff. Universal Studios' Harry Potter Forbidden Journey is an example of an existing story. So this takes guests through scenes and environments that are a direct lift from the books and films. This ride vehicle is actually something that's called a KUKA arm, and it's really interesting if you guys want to look one up. Sorry, I didn't bring one with me, but this is actually one of the things that we use to test different roller coasters. So this is a very cool thing to check out.
Amanda, I'm sorry for interrupting you. Very sorry. So it seems that on our end, we're still having some challenges with the screen share, dropping frame rates and things like that. So we are going to have to transition to more without the visuals, unfortunately. And if there's something that we can do to fix that further on down the event, we'll let you know. But we may need to just rely on you today, and we can also do it interview style if you prefer.
I'm going to mime as much as humanly possible.
So your performance background is going to come in really handy right now.
Stories, I did bring things like Puffer Pig from Star Wars that honks stuff, so I can use those to try and mime.
Yeah. And again, very, very sorry about that.
Okay.
That throws a bit of a wrench in it for you, but I think we still have some awesome stuff to hear from you.
Okay. So you can't see any of just the pictures that I'm showing, and
unfortunately, yeah, we can't see your screen share. It's just something's not coming through properly.
All right. Well, I'm very sorry about that, guys. We can continue on with little bits of just me miming. So let me see if I can blaze through some of this. So Harry Potter Forbidden Journey. All of these rides, by the way, theme park nerds have strapped GoPros to their chest and have done full ride POVs. So if any of these you find interesting, I would highly recommend going through and watching these POVs so that you can see kind of what the ride experience is like. But I'm also hoping that some of you are kind of based in Los Angeles and maybe have been through Universal Studios and Disneyland, and we can kind of reference back to certain rides that you guys might have experienced.
We've actually got somebody in the chat right now just actually saying that they do that themselves, that they're one of those people that...
You do that?
Yeah.
Oh, friend me on Instagram. I will watch all of that stuff over and over again. Okay, great. So Harry Potter, really awesome. It's basically a ride that takes you through little diagrams of bits of the film and bits of the books that you've already seen. So you're still kind of the hero of the moment because you're supposed to be flying alongside Harry Potter to help him, but it is telling you a story that you already know. Now, the next up, this is a new one. This is actually from Animal Kingdom, and it's, so that's a Disney property, sorry. So this is the world of Avatar, and it's the Flights of Passage. Now, it's a world experience, and if you've been on at Disneyland's California Adventure, the California Soaring, this is very much the same thing. So it's called a flying theater. And what you need to do is you sort of sit in this chair that kind of looks like a motorcycle or a bicycle. And the whole idea is that you are the lead character from the first film, and you're going to embody a Na'vi warrior, and you're going to ride a banshee through various environments from the first film and some of the ones that are yet to be made. What's also cool about this ride system is it's actually a motion base that's on this huge tiered flying theater. And so you sit in this little car, and it's got like a little bit of axis that's on there. But then inside of the car, it's got bellows. So between your legs, it feels like the banshee is breathing beneath you. Very cool, wonderful thing that actually helps sell this idea of immersion from within it.
That sounds amazing.
I know, it is. It's
That's
very exciting.
incredible.
I highly recommend, if you're ever in Orlando, to go check it out, because I haven't experienced anything like it just yet. Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about a new storyline, and that's actually Mission Breakout at California Adventure. So this is the Tower of Terror ride that was reskinned to be Guardians of the Galaxy. And I know a lot of people had huge problems with Tower of Terror going away. But it's really a new thing that we're starting to see more and more of, this sort of taking an existing IP and placing it on various screens throughout the rides. And then what's great is, as the films continue to be made, you can change just one or two screens without having to completely retheme the ride, and it keeps it current and up to date. Framestore actually worked on this one, and this is one of the very first attractions that we did. And it was really exciting to get to work with Disney and James Gunn to create it. We worked on all the movies, and so it was really kind of a natural evolution for us to take the character work that we did on Rocket Raccoon and some of the others and apply it to this ride. All right, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so I usually do have a slide for this that is a complete breakaway from media rides, but it's one of my favorites. It is a wooden roller coaster that's actually out here in the UK at a place called Alton Towers. And it's really a great example about how theme parks are taking this idea of story narrative and even putting them into their standalone rides that don't require media. So it is called The Wicker Man, not the Nick Cage version, but the Celtic storyline. And the plot centers around this Celtic village of pagans who have chosen you, the audience, to be their new sacrifices to the Wicker Men. And so they've got this whole pre-show that explains what a Wicker Man is, and thanks you very much for volunteering today. And so then you get into the ride vehicle, go up the lift hill, and you've got like all this exhilaration that things are going to happen. You go in the turns left and right. But then there's also a massive Wicker Man that is on fire that you plunge through the middle of. And so that is your sacrifice. And it kind of looks like the ride vehicle is on fire for the rest of the journey. And then when you get to the exit doors, the ride is actually spewing out smoke, and all of the walls are charred and scorched like they're on fire. And then you exit into the afterlife, which also happens to be the gift shop. But I absolutely love it. I love that they're definitely thinking about the ride experience as a journey. And we're going to talk more about this as well. So there's still some challenges when making these rides. We really need to figure out and to describe to the audience where you are. You know, why am I all of a sudden dropped into a pagan village in the 1600s? Why are 20 other people with me on this journey? why am I being asked to be put into a ride vehicle? Or why are you asking me to put 3D glasses onto my face? And then at the end of it, what's the outcome? You know, you gave me a goal, but did we win or did we lose? Okay, so let's go through these a little bit. Harry Potter is amazing, and if you haven't been, check out some POVs of what the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, the entire land, looks like, because it's probably one of the best examples of how there's a lot more to consider when developing these immersive experiences beyond just the ride. Really, in the grand scheme of things, the ride is the finale of your journey. And everything that is leading up from when you enter the land to getting on the ride is preparing you for that ride. A lot of us often talk about the ride experience as a series of gates that each audience member has to pass through in order to get to the final stage. And each one of these gates is sort of not only mentally preparing you for what's about to come, but it's also creating the suspended disbelief that we need. Now, luckily, when people go to Disneyland, when they go to Universal, they've bought their ticket. They're already invested that they want to have a good experience. So it's not like in films where you sort of have to tease out the suspended disbelief. You kind of already got them on board from the moment that they've entered. So these gates are sort of like concentric rings throughout the park, from the land, from the ride to the land to the whole park. And for a really long time, the media was just the land, just the ride that's inside of it. But now we're expanding out to the land and even throughout the entirety of the park so that we can shape your entire journey rather than having it just be a 5-minute experience that you walk away from. And we're going to talk about how we do that a lot more. But you're also going to start to see like phone games that sort of take you through. Another example of this would be Galaxy's Edge, the new land at Disney. And they've got like an iPhone game so that you can start to play and interact with some of the droids. So that's a lot of fun. I would highly suggest that. Also, really great way to keep children engaged throughout a 3-hour line. So very cool. Well done, Disney. Okay, what have we got next? I so wish I could share this photo with you guys because it is a concentric giant dome in a theme park with a land that looks like you're in France. And if you were thinking that I was describing Epcot, unfortunately, you'd be disappointed because this is a theme park that's actually in Germany called Europa Park. And it's a really wonderful place that practices a lot of the large-scale themings that we're sort of talking about today, as well as how we're blending hardware and media into that world experience. Why I really love this park too is that it's owned by one of the top roller coaster manufacturers in the world. It's a family company called Mack, and they've been doing this since the early 1800s by building caravan carriages for circuses and carnivals. So like the wooden horse-drawn ones or the ones that you'd put on trains, they've been doing this for that long. So it's pretty amazing. And Europa Park is their test bed for every single new ride device that they want to come up with. They put it in their own park first, which is really cool. And they won loads of awards for incorporating ride theming into their transportation. One of those is a kids ride that's based on Arthur, the film by Luc Besson. And it's kind of this magical world filled with pixies and gnomes. And the ride vehicle looks like you're riding on this leaf. So it's completely encased in fiberglass and you sort of sit inside of the leaf. And there's no external mechanisms to make it look like it's a ride vehicle. All of the safety protocols, even changing the language that you hear in the headsets, that's all done with NFC chips. So they've just completely blended this whole story so that you don't even see the track or anything like that, which is really wonderful. But far and away, the hardest element to probably explain away creatively are 3D glasses and VR headsets. because there's only so many ways that you can say it's a scientist laboratory and you can only see the particle with these special glasses, or witches made these bespectacles for you. That gets old super quick. So what Mac decided to do is incredibly clever. Inside of that geodesic dome that I told you about is actually a dark ride roller coaster that travels through various Parisian scenes. So what they decided to do is, instead of building a whole new VR roller coaster, that they would put in a second entrance and a second loading dock for this ride, have all of the riders put on the VR headsets within the one carriage, and then when that was ready, they could just pop it onto the track for the Can-Can coaster. And you've got all the audio in your headset, so you don't hear the French Can-Can dancing music. You hear the VR show that they're showing just for you. And this is really clever because it takes a long time for people to put on those headsets, and it takes an even longer time to make sure that all of those things are secure as you go down the line. That can take 10 minutes, which in the life of a roller coaster park, you can usually get through about 10 carriages within that same amount of time. So they could keep up their per person per hour average without sacrificing that time, while still just adding on this one car every now and again. Really wonderful. And as I was talking about trying to blend in the hardware with the theme, they chose an IP that was super sympathetic to this, and hats off to them for choosing one. They chose Valerian, and I haven't watched the movie, but there is an amazing scene where you have a bunch of tourists who put on headsets to walk through a market that can only be seen in the headset. Smashing idea. Well done, them. So that's one that I would recommend also looking at a POV of, because it's really funny that people are in the headsets and then they've got the GoPro that's on their camera, and they go into blackness for a moment, and then they pop out to the other loading bay that looks like they're in Paris. And then you're going through this whole Paris scene, but you look like you're in a sci-fi world. It's really funny. Anyways, how are we doing, Adam? How's my miming and hand descriptions?
I think you're doing great. You're painting some excellent mental pictures as you're walking us through this, and all of this sounds amazing. We have had a couple of questions come up, a couple of relevant questions to what you're talking about. Let's see, and I'll do my best to get the screen names right, but I may not pronounce all of them perfectly. But let's see. Bill Hateria asks, how do you expect the industry of theme parks to evolve with, the whole Corona situation? How are you guys sort of strategizing in the midst of that? And there was another question that came in that's related. That's like, how, in the midst of production, how are you even putting together or creating these assets that you're talking about under the present circumstances?
Yeah. Okay. So these are two really great questions, and let's start with how we are currently working as artists, and then we'll move into how the industry is going to evolve as a whole. So right now, we actually still have about 3 rides that are full steam ahead in production. All of us are working from home, and we've got VPNs into our machines that are at work. But as we'll talk about in a minute, really the only way that you can review a lot of this work is in context. And we go through great lengths to try to understand how all of these things are going to look like as a unit. So a lot of this has really pushed forward our virtual staging and virtual production workflows into our rides team. So we always build a real-time version of not only what the ride looks like and what it looks like as you are moving in a car around these corners, but what it could look like as you're moving through the land. What does it look like as you're walking onto the ride, and how does the music change when you go from one section to another? Because you'll notice that if you go to Disneyland, is that the music is always constantly changing, but there's never a hard line between the two lands. Like, they have got this seamless blend that moves in between all of them. And We do actually partner with our audio engineers to achieve that experience, but then we're also looking to achieve a lot of that experience with the media. And again, the only way to do that is with a virtual exploration. What's been interesting now is because all of us are at home and we don't have access to a VR headset, and I don't have the budget to send a Vive to 50 artists, nor do I have the R&D support and the tech support to also be able to explain to the client why the headset isn't working because maybe they forgot to plug it in. We actually transitioned from just doing a VR version to a multiplayer first-person shooter style game so that all of us can walk around the space together and we can say, you know, hey, Adam, I'm standing on the right-hand side and I can see your avatar is standing on the left-hand side. Why don't you come with me and we'll take a look at the media from this POV rather than from that one. And we can start to see how things might break or how they work together in concert.
That's fantastic.
It's really been wonderful.
That's really innovative. I love that.
Yeah, and I think we're definitely going to carry this workflow forward because, as I mentioned, a lot of our rides are in China, are in the Middle East. That's a huge growing market for us. And you can't fly me and my whole team over to China once a week so that we can do dailies. Sometimes we've also got our clients in Los Angeles. You know, this is always going to be a global workflow. And oftentimes the only way to do this is in live virtual sessions like the ones that I've just described. So how theme parks are going to move forward with coronavirus? I think we're going to start to see a lot more of the virtual queuing process. You kind of noticed it with the Rise of the Resistance opening and with Smuggler's Run at Galaxy's Edge, where you needed to get to the theme park and then you had to book like a slot, and then that slot time would tell you when you would go to the line. So instead of standing in this huge 3-hour line where everybody is smashed together, you know, they're probably going to start to call your group in small, more isolated spots as you move through. And I think that's also where having more experiences throughout the external areas of the park, within the land and within the park itself, is really going to blossom, because you need to give people something to do while they're waiting for that like 15-minute window of time. But that doesn't solve social distancing. That I think is going to be a combination of not only all of us learning what this new normal is, but then also the parks potentially reducing the number of people that go into them. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, but I think, and to be honest, that's kind of the operator's question. I think from a ride standpoint, you know, we'll start to be looking at ways for the vehicles to keep you slightly more separated, and the virtual queuing. I do have, you know what, hell, let's just talk about it now, because if you can't see the picture, I can do it now. VR rides aren't going away. You've probably seen a lot of them as reskins of existing roller coasters, where they've got like the big giant headset and the big cumbersome block that's in front of you. That's going to stop. We actually just did a new VR motion-based attraction, which is called Midnight Ride, and that's in the Lionsgate Entertainment World in China. And we'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But what that actually does is, like where you're going to get on a ride and it's stereo, so they might give you some glasses, and then by the end of that, you take the glasses off and it goes in a dishwasher. Same thing. We're going to have you put on a headset that's basically like a balaclava that fits over your face. And then from the ceiling, it's kind of on a garage door opener, swings in your Vive that then electromagnets to this face piece for you. Then when the ride's done, that Vive gets swooped back into the ceiling. You take off the headpiece and that goes in a dishwasher. So you're never having the same piece of equipment touching your face that has touched anyone else's body beforehand. So we're really going to kind of look at that hygiene level. The VR headset that I told you before, where everybody's putting on the same Vive, those only get cleaned about once every 10 riders pre-COVID. So I think we're going to have to move into these more hygienic realms. And what's also great for the operator is if one Vive goes down, you don't have to take out the entire ride position to fix the thing. You can just unplug the Vive, plug in a new one into its garage door opener, and away you go, which is really nice, limits downtime. Cool. Did I answer those questions, Adam?
Yeah, heck yeah, that's amazing. It sounds like just getting your VR rig in the ride is going to be a ride unto itself. Like that whole process sounds super sci-fi and amazing to me.
Yeah. You know what? Again, we're gonna. Screw it. I'll talk about it now. The Valerian ride that I just mentioned, where everybody's putting on the headset, that's in a separate room from the loading bay where you get on the car. And right now it's a little bit wonky, but the thing is, you put on the headset, you're in a separate space, so everybody can make sure that it's tightened. Again, they've got NFC chips, which then the ride operator will just tap to your Gear VR in this case to change the language settings to French or German or whatever needs to be done. That whole process takes about, I'd say it's probably 5 minutes per person. And when you think that a roller coaster train typically carries about 20, 24 people, that's a really long time to process all of that. So what they've done is they've offboarded that into a separate room, and they've LiDAR'd that room as well as the hallway that it takes you to get into the ride vehicle. So right now, you're standing there with your headset on, you've got stuff to look at while the crew member is getting everybody else behind you in line sorted. And then when they go, okay, everyone's ready to move to the train, you can see each other because there's a fiduciary cluster that's on the top of your head that lets everybody know where each person is. And you walk around the hallway and you can see the ride vehicle that's on your right, and everybody gets in, and then away you go onto your journey. But again, we've offboarded all of that. So you can have multiple rooms with those 20 to 24 people that are all prepped and getting ready with very little downtime about what's happening to the engineering of the ride. Kind of think about it like table turnover. If any of you guys have been waiters and waitresses, you know, if you can turn over a table in an hour, every single hour, then you've got more tips and there's more money for the restaurant. It's the same thing with a park ride. We want as many people to get through that ride as humanly possible, because, you know, we also want them to come back to the park and we want them to say that they got good value for their money. So we need to keep a huge number of people in the park. Again, this is pre-COVID, and a huge number of people in the park that can all get through as many rides as humanly possible. So that's where that Valerian roller coaster I thought was really cool. Where it fell down, and Mac again doing prototyping, and so I wholly support what they did. One volume for 24 people and only having a tracking cluster on your head is not enough. So you've got tracking dropouts quite a bit. You had a very rigid avatar, so everybody's walking just like this around the corners. And what's also kind of interesting is the way that these VR roller coasters work and how we make sure that we time the story to what's happening on the track is we attach a pedometer to the bottom of the coaster, and then we tether the headset to the car so that we know you've traveled X amount of distance, and at that distance point, you should be experiencing this part of the story. That does not work when you've got two loading bays, because sometimes the car needs to stop so that somebody else can get on. And what was funny for ours was we stopped at a point where it was supposed to be like this huge multi-level mall with people walking around it. And so as you were walking through, they would walk with you, but then it would stop and like the whole world would freeze and you didn't know, if your ride froze or what the deal was. But they're going to continue to iterate on that. This was just their V1. So again, I wholly support what they're trying. But I just think that those little things are quite interesting, and they may not be something that you fully expect to have happen when you start this ride. Like you might go, oh yeah, pedometer, brilliant idea. Until what happens when you need to stop the ride for a minute? Then everybody's world freezes. And then you get pulled out of that suspension of disbelief. So how do we always keep everyone in it? Cool.
Yeah, all of this is amazing. And I mean, we've got more questions coming through the chat. I actually have a question that I wanted to raise because this is all really inspired. It seems like we're in a time where virtual or digital and practical are just melding together. And yes, it sounds like theme park rides is an amazing petri dish where all of that is developing and problems are being solved. What do you think about the whole, all the innovations that are happening in real time? And I'm thinking particularly as you're describing these rides, I'm thinking of like when they filmed The Mandalorian and the actors are going on the stage and they forget that it's screens.
You've stolen one huge thing that I was going to talk about in this thing. That's fine. No, you've given me this tremendous segue. So tell you what, let's jump into the case studies. And again, I'm going to have to do the mime hands. The only thing that we've missed so far is the outcomes to rides, and I'll sum this up to you in about 2 minutes. So nobody wants to pay $100 a ticket to go to Disneyland and be called a loser because they didn't succeed at the end of a ride. We always kind of need to end on a happy note, right? So if you go into Disney Star Tours, you help the rebels destroy the Death Star, and you're made an official member of the Rebel Alliance. If you go to Universal Studios Hollywood, you ride the Transformers ride, you help Optimus Prime defeat Megatron, you get to become a member of the Autobots. There's a Fast and the Furious ride, you help Vin Diesel save the world from explosions, you get to be a member of the Toretto family, that kind of a thing. Even in Hollywood horror, Halloween Horror Nights, you escape these mazes after running from like zombies and chainsaw-wielding murderers. You're successful, but like just barely, because we want you screaming. But we still need to have you alive at the end of it. So the only thing that is kind of changing that dynamic a little bit is the new Smuggler's Run ride that is a real-time system. So this is Disney's Galaxy's Edge, the Millennium Falcon ride. And, sorry, beep. I am trying to kind of read my notes a little bit every now and again. So that whole centers around 6 people going into the Millennium Falcon. You are either pilots, your engineers, or your gunners all sat into the kind of cockpit of the Millennium Falcon. And you all have to work together through pushing different buttons or pulling some levers in order to get the Millennium Falcon to take, I forget what it is. Somebody in the chat will probably correct me for this. But you've got to do the Kessel Run, and you need to get the smuggler's cargo from point A to point B. Now, this has to be really hard because Han Solo is the best pilot in the galaxy, so you can't be better than he is. So if somebody doesn't push the buttons in the right order, you actually don't travel in the same direction. So all of these things are really based on the audience interaction. And if you're super competitive, you can try to have varying scores that are different from your friends. So there you go. There's the Millennium Falcon one. Let's move over to some of the case studies. And I'm going to start with one that is probably one of the early genesis of media in theme park rides. And I think everybody's ridden this ride. It's Disney's Star Tours. And whenever anyone asks me what media for theme park creation is and what my job is like, this is kind of the touchstone that I give them, because I think everybody can immediately understand. You're in a motion base. There is a screen in front of you. That motion base rocks to reveal different parts of the screen, and it makes you feel like you're traveling through a sense of inertia. And then, so it's really just dependent on the degrees of freedom that this ride vehicle has. And so for a visual effects pipeline, this is pretty easy. You know, you're doing a 5-minute ride, and it's all through the same workflow that you would tend to do if you were doing a movie or a TV show. And all we've really got to do is export the render camera for the engineering group to mimic that 3DOF. Not 3 depths of field, degrees of freedom. Excuse me about that.
Okay.
So there's certain limitations in the range of motions that you can have. But what's really kind of interesting is that you can actually make a lot of these camera moves more extreme. So like if your 3DOF can only go down about 20 degrees, you can actually push the camera so that it feels like it's done 80. Because you're giving the audience the sense of inertia, so they kind of still feel like they're looking down a precipice rather than only making like a 20-degree shift, which is quite cool. In that, when you're thinking about those things, what we did for one particular ride is we actually really focused on what the track surface would be. So what our vehicle was going to ride over the top of rather than fly. And so we wanted to make sure that it was like, okay, can we add in tiles? Can we add in speed bumps? Anything to kind of give that camera a different sort of shake so you feel a level of progression. The other thing that we had to think about in this one, and I'm going to get to the Mandalorian point in a bit, I promise.
No,
I'm in my flow.
Everything is amazing here. Everything's amazing.
Except for the pictures. You get Michael Caine in the background and stuff.
Sure. Well, you're a great storyteller, so I think you're doing a good job.
That's right. Thank you. So the other thing that we had to do for this one particular ride, it's called, and you'll notice this in Star Tours as well. So the ride that we worked on was called Mockingjay Flight, and it was all based on the Hunger Games IP, actually. So this is kind of post-revolution. You were members of the rebellion, and you have to escape the president's tyranny. So what we need to do is we need to find a way to get somebody from a car where you're escaping out back alleys into a plane. And that's really difficult to do when you're in the middle of an action, because you're driving the car and then you're getting attached to the bottom of a plane, but you don't see what any of those mechanisms are because they're all above you or they're maybe behind you and to the sides, and your limited range of field doesn't allow for that. So the way we get around this point, and again, you'll see this in Star Tours, is we introduce a second vehicle that you can see. So before we start our journey, another car comes out and pulls out in front of us, and we follow that little car for a bit, and then we separate. And then we meet up at the point where we become planes, and you see the other car become a plane. So then you understand that you are now becoming a plane, and you both get to fly together, which is, kind of one of those plot devices that you sort of need to invent, your own ride MacGuffin, if you will, to further the storyline, but without confusing anyone that's a member of the audience at that moment. What else was particularly interesting? So for some reason in the process of Hunger Games, the writer does have final say of what these rides look like, and she decided that there was going to be no more guns and violence in any of the rides. So we couldn't show anyone dying, yet at the same time we had to explain how we escaped from malevolent forces. So if you guys have ever seen the movie Brazil, where like these big towers come out of the water, we had to do that with like nets that would pop out and then catch planes.
Wow.
so that the fighter jets behind us would stop and they wouldn't be chasing us anymore. So you've eliminated the threat, but without actually showing that they've died. And I think we even needed to spin the camera around to show that this event happened behind us and that we were safe. So anyways, that's, so Star Tours actually opened in 1987, really old. I was 4 years old. Please don't do math. And in 2011, they actually revamped the whole ride. ILM did this. And instead of having a linear storyline, what they actually did was they turned it into a branching storyline. So you might start out in one location, but then you hyper jump to one of 3 planets. And then from those 3 planets, you might get a hologram that is one of 3 different holograms. And then you hyperjump to one of, again, 3 other planets. And that story matrix all comes into place so that you can have repeat writability and continue to make sure that people want to come and revisit, because through all of those, I think there's about 60 different combinations that you can get to. And it's very difficult to ever see the same show twice. But for somebody who's working in visual effects and having to create all of these, that's a lot. That's a lot of 5-minute clips that all need to have a perfect sync and hook up to each other. And so you get these very complicated spider graphs that are all like charted out behind you, trying to figure out where these different, 90 different clips that all need to somehow interchange with each other come into play. But from visual effects point of view, we give those as vignettes. So we might give those as 1-minute clips, and then they've got a server on the back end that says, okay, planet 1, shuffle between one of these 5. Planet 2, shuffle between one of these 5. So I at least don't have to do 60 different deliveries. I can just deliver the component parts, and Disney handles all that, which is cool. Okay, here's where we're going to get to The Mandalorian. So please ask Bo Jansen about this, because this is one of the most difficult things to explain without pictures. And I'm going to try and do it. You know what? Maybe Adam will try and do it together.
Okay, sure.
So, Universal Florida has a ride that pioneered this technique, and Bo worked on it. And this is the Spider-Man ride. But if you've also seen the Transformers ride at Universal Hollywood's, you're going to kind of get the same vibe. So what it is it's a track, and you are in a car that goes around this track, and then you see different screens, and the screens play out media before you, but they also need to blend into what the set dressing is around you. So let's think about some different examples of what a dark ride like this would be. The Haunted Mansion, although they don't really have screens, that's probably the most classic one. Pirates of the Caribbean, like imagine if some of those things were screens and we still needed to blend it into Pirates Bay. That's kind of a lot of the work that we're doing. And these screens are all different sized. Sometimes they're curved. Sometimes we linger on them for a long time. So that's a lot of work. But the challenge is you're looking at me, you see a flat screen, right? So we can't have that as a ride vehicle is coming in from the side and maybe stopping to look at you head on and then coming back as it exits. What we need to do is we can't have this be a flat television. We need to have it be a window into that world. Yeah. So what this is called is perspective warped media. And it looks batshit crazy, like you've taken a lot of acid, and then there's maybe 5 seconds where it all comes into frame, and then it looks batshit crazy again. But then when you project it onto the screens and ride through the rider's perspective, then it all starts to make sense. So what this is it's actually a lens shader that's a combination of what the render camera from the scene is, as well as what the I'll get a little bit higher. The render camera from the scene, as well as the render camera from the ride vehicle. And then those two work in concert to figure out what the perspective warp is as you go around those corners. So it always looks like you're looking down the same vantage point and the same line of sight, rather than having a flat television with a single vanishing point on there. How did that work? Kind of with me on that one?
It sounds like maybe an analog to this would be like when you see those amazing like chalk drawings on staircases or on the ground. Yes. That when you look at it, it's just this is moving so that whatever vantage point you look at it from, it looks like the optical illusion that you want them to see.
Yes. Okay. And you brought up the point about the Mandalorian using this. Mm-hmm. So this is through ILM Stagecraft, and all of their LED walls were hooked up to a real-time engine, and then the real-time engine also knew where the shooting camera was. If you guys have Disney Plus, There's a whole behind the scenes on the technology of The Mandalorian. I highly suggest going to check that out because it will go a lot more in depth into these visuals. But basically what happens is, your camera lens has a certain range of focus that it's allowed to have. And that doesn't always work with the LED walls showing the exact same screen. Like, you can't have this be a matte painting. You need this to have it be an extension of the world. So as that camera moves around the character that's maybe walking into the, what's the Jawas crawler's name? Because that one's my favorite.
The Sandcrawler.
The Sandcrawler. That's
Yeah.
right. Thank you. Too many things in my brain right now. So as the Mandalorian's walking up to the Sandcrawler and like his field of view changes, and the Sandcrawler actually has to go up even higher than what they built on set. Like, that whole perspective line needs to change with the camera. And so that's what the real-time engine is doing in the background, is it's gen-locking the camera, it's figuring out not only the path and the motion, and then in real time, it's rendering out to those various screen walls the different warps that are needed in order to get applied to one curved wall here, one curved wall here, and a ceiling. So lots of stuff happening in the same thing. Okay, so that's Dark Rides.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, go for it. Do you have any questions before I move on? Because that was the hardest one to explain. And I still have artists who work on rides who don't get that. So it's a very difficult one. Again, please either invite me back and we'll talk more about it, or go to talk to Bo Jansen and he'll also do hand mimes and maybe do another version.
Yeah, and what you mentioned, the Mandalorian behind the scenes is a great supplement to everything that Amanda is sharing with us, because it's the actors themselves forgot that they were in front of screens. They and talk about suspension of disbelief when you have no added technology. It's just your eyeballs in the open air, and you're looking at something. Your brain just makes it real automatically.
Yeah. Actually, I'd probably say that 80% of the media that I've rendered all requires some form of that perspective warping. Rather, if it's with a lens shader, like I mentioned, or if it's with a render camera reprojected onto a surface that's then piped out from what our final delivery is going to be. Think about screens that you might have in physical spaces that are quite high up, and that screen might be flush to a certain angle, but you need to look like you're looking up inside of a big tube or inside of like another world. All of that can't be rendered from this flat angle. It needs to be rendered from the point of view of the person who's going to be looking into this other world. So that's actually a huge part of what we're doing. And when I asked my artists what I should relay to the students of Gnomon about what the most important thing of rides is, they all said cameras and perspective. So there you go. If you take away anything from this talk, cameras and perspective.
Awesome. Well, and there's a couple of points that have come up in the chat as you've been sort of taking us down the rabbit hole, as it were, into all of this. One person's wondering, do you see is there a huge difference in production time and schedule for a ride that's involving, VR and all of this sort of augmented projections and things like that?
It really depends. Part of the things that I love about rides is every single one is different. Sometimes you're doing 2 minutes, sometimes you're doing 5, sometimes you have, here we go. Here's a perfect example. We did the Q media for Jurassic World at Universal Studios Hollywood. I don't know why I'm pointing behind me. Like, it's behind me. It's not behind me. So we did that. I think that was about a year or two ago. And that is 45 minutes of media. But we had to do 3 deliveries because the time of day in them had to change with the time of day that each person who is viewing in the line might be there at. So there needed to be like a mid-after or an early morning, a golden hour, and then a nighttime delivery. So that's 45 times 3. That's a lot, but we still only had, I think, about 3 minutes to do it all in. So that's a far more compressed time frame than what you would see in film. But at the same time, we were sort of augmenting the same stuff rather than doing multiple different sequences. For some of the larger things, so like a lot of the dark rides that I've been talking about, those can still be about a year or two. Let's talk about the timeline for the life of a theme park ride. From inception, when Disney decides, or Universal, or whomever, decides we're going to put in a new ride, we're going to figure out where it's going to be, and we're going to bulldoze the area, to opening day, that's usually like 6 years. And that's involving all of the pre-planning that you might have, trying to figure out which IP that they're going to use, or if they need to come up with a new one, what the ride system is going to be. You kind of have to plan out 6 years in advance, and particularly when you're looking at things like VR or additional emerging technologies. That's really tricky, because then by the time you get to your opening date, your stuff might be 5 years out of date. So that's kind of where we come in. And that's frequently why the media schedule is actually pushed all the way back to where delivery is, because they sort of want to wait until the very last moment to get that emerging technology like kind of as refined as it can be, as bleeding edge as humanly possible. We also partner with a lot of software companies. So frequently I'm working on beta software or working directly with the manufacturers to see if they can provide me with plugins that aren't necessarily widely released to the public. So we try to be as bleeding edge as humanly possible. From the time point that it comes to my hands to when it leaves the door, that can be a bit like a film schedule. It's certainly not, if you're doing a VR coaster, it's certainly not what a AAA games schedule is, because that's years and years. For one, we did one that is my favorite one to talk about. Well, we'll talk about it now. Is Midnight Ride. It's also in China, and I love it so much. But I'm going to leave that as a hanging butt. The IP is Twilight. However, it's really cool. It's a spin-off ride, and you're Team Jacob, so you get to ride motorcycles alongside wolves in the dark of night in a forest while vampires are trying to hunt you. And they're like jumping out of the woods and stuff and trying to bite your neck. And you go in groups of 4. Actually, no, sorry. Scroll that back. You go in a group of 12 into the loading bay, but then you're split up into teams of 4, because that's what our system could handle. And you can actually see each other. We do full hand and body tracking throughout the whole thing. And if Adam goes into the ride with me, I can see that he's riding a yellow bike and I'm on a green one. And when we go in, our avatars are yellow and green, and we can wave at each other. And we actually have full agency across the track. So I can see if he's trying to cut me off and do swerves. And at the same time, like, I can try and like get past you at certain points.
Yeah.
All while wolves are running alongside us and there's vampires, which is kind of fun. And so that was, I want to say it was about a year from start to finish, which is severely compressed down from what you would get from a AAA games trying to do a level of the same kind of design. But we also kind of split up the workflow a little bit. So we did a a visual effects pipeline from all of the build and animation, and up until we got to layout and what would be considered tech art in the gaming. So all layout and lighting, as well as animation integration, was done in-engine through the VR team, while all of the assets and animation of both the hero segments and everything that you would apply to a character gem, we did with a standard VFX pipeline. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question.
Yeah, it's kind of its own. I mean, you've got film and television, you've got the games pipeline. It's sort of its own thing, it sounds like. And I think you made the analogy of it's almost like designing a level for a AAA game.
Yes, it is. The challenge that we faced on that one in particular is it's not open world. So you and I couldn't speed off at different rates and still have a storyline play out in front of us or experience different things. So we sort of had to approach this a little bit differently. And we put it into chapters, just like you would if you were, well, both in a video game or in a doing like a TV show. And we said, okay, at the start, Adam and Amanda are going to figure out what it's like to be in this world, what it's like to ride motorbikes. So we give you full agency, but we also give you these side paths so that it looks like there's other things that you can do. And so we can go off on different routes for the first third of the game. However, we also have a bit of a volume that even though you and I can control our speed and the direction that we're in, you remain within a ride ribbon, and there is a box that makes sure that you can't get farther ahead of me than I am this far back. And then when we get to the end of chapter 1, that box starts to slide closer and closer so that we can hit a very specific story point. And in our case, that chapter 2 is kind of fun for us because what we do is then I go off on my own journey where your yellow character becomes an NPC. So Adam's off kind of getting the same show that I am, but what we've done is our NPCs, our friends, leave us. And so we now experience this world alone. And while we still have a little bit of agency to go left or right on the track, it's still within a very short range. And we do this for a couple of reasons. Not only do we want to make sure that we heighten the suspense, that we're taking you on your own ride that is really pretty scary because it's super dark, vampires are chasing you, but we want to screw with you a little bit. So we actually have one part where it looks like a vampire has eaten Adam from my point of view and has thrown you and your motorbike over my head. So I get like the back wheel coming like this close to
Wow.
the cool, which is really neat. So we go through all of that, and then when we get to the very end of the finale, that's when our friends rejoin as no longer NPCs, and we all find out, oh no, that was all just a dream, and we're all safe and fine and happy, and look, we succeeded, and we get to join Jacob's wolf pack. Because I'm just going to follow that, keep that trope alive.
Sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we're merging this idea of somewhat linear storytelling, allowing a bit of agency like you would have in a video game play, but then also making sure that we hit these very specific story beats at very specific times so that everybody's getting somewhat of the same story, but then they're also having their unique experience on top of it.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're designing a multiverse of possibilities for each person riding the ride as
Yes,
it's
I would
unfolding. Yeah.
argue it is easier though than what Star Wars did with Star Tours did with their story matrix, because I can just say, there's a little bit of track. You could go over there and you get to make that decision rather than having the computer make that decision and me have 10 different possibilities of what that track could be. Like, I'm just
Okay. Yeah.
going to go, no, there's just a little bit of track that you could do over here, or, you guys could do a figure eight around these things, or you could not,
Mhm.
It's also, again, allowing the writer to make that choice. And also, we don't have the opportunity like you do in games to have a level that is describing how to play the game. We have 5 minutes to tell a story. And so I can't have you turn this handle and this avoids the wolf and this thing here makes sure that you don't get eaten. Like, it all has to be a naturally occurring process where you learn what you're doing. And I can't say, choose this ride over here to experience something new. Like, there's no bot that's just going to pop up and say that that's an option, where then you then learn that that option is a possibility further down the track. These all have to be very organic, and we have to find ways to make sure that these choices are natural. So the only way that we found that we could do that in our specific case for Midnight Ride was lighting cues. and texture cues, like you would have in a video game, but just kind of saying like, there's a bit of light dapple, there's a light patch that's over here. Maybe I could explore that, and then you go off that way. And if you can't, then you just sort of get bumped back to the ribbon that you need to be on, or you get to have this wholly new experience that my friend Adam didn't get to have, and then I get to hold over his head for the rest of the day.
There you go. I love the seamlessness of how someone you join the ride with becomes an NPC, but you're not thinking about that. To you, it's just that happened to my friend.
Yeah, my friend got eaten by a vampire. I know. Isn't that weird? And we both have that. Adam might be like, Amanda, you got eaten by a vampire. It's like, no, you got eaten by the vampire. So that's kind of fun.
That's really cool.
I'm going to stay kind of in the vein of using more real time and what's happening now. And then we'll kind of go into where the other stuff is going. But actually, before I do that, I just kind of, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about all of the different deliveries. And I'm just going to fire these off pretty quickly. Over the past year, I've been asked to do rides that are for, or media that's for the main ride, media that's for pre-show, about 10 different screens that are all different sizes and content inside of lines, fake windows inside of restaurants and cruise ships, windows that are inside of gift shops that display different content. But then on top of that, we also have things like projection mapping. So at night, various buildings might be a part of a show. So that's a part of our kind of remit as well. We talked about the cue media that needs to change with the time of day. We're going to see a lot more of that as well with the rides changing times of day. But then there's also issues for what happens if something breaks. And in the industry, this is called the suboptimal show. And there's varying levels of this. Some theme parks will say only 10% of a ride can break before we say no more audience members and we shut down the ride and fix it. Some will say that goes up to 30 minutes. And I say break, that implies that there's going to be some danger. That's like if an animatronic no longer waves at you. That's a part of the suboptimal show. So there's things like if you went to Mission Breakout, there's an animatronic in the pre-show of Rocket Raccoon that's up on the top. And sometimes his animatronic breaks, but that's not within the 10% range. So what they do is they've got a screen that shows various parts of the collector, and so they then do a split screen that is, here's the collector talking about what's going to happen, and here's Rocket, being mouthy. But that's 3 minutes of a full CG character animated raccoon that is for the off chance that maybe once a month that might happen for one guest, or one car of guests. So that's also something to take into consideration, is that there's actually a lot more to the delivery than just the one ride. And also, you might get requests to say like, "Hey, that was really cool that you made the Mission Breakout. We now want one for Halloween." And so you've got to do a whole different overlay and just change out the different screens for a Halloween version of that show. Because theme parks now, they're really feeding into that FOMO. And right at the moment, and I've heard some of the industry member people talk about this, is like, some people, I want to go to theme parks by myself all the time. But some people don't want to. They want to go as a group. But that can be like, oh, well, Adam's busy this weekend, so we'll wait until he's available. But if I say, Adam, Halloween of Mission Breakout is only this weekend, we gotta go, then it creates that FOMO. It becomes a unique experience. And so we're seeing not only just a Halloween show and a Christmas show, but then we're also starting to see more seasonal variations that might be one-offs or might be repeated things. So there you go. There's always more work than the initial brief. Be prepared for at least twice the workload.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Do you have any more questions, or shall I jump into the?
I've got one question that's come up in the chat by Mystic Bobo. That's a great name.
Good name.
Do you think that with the developments in the likes of, like, say, Unity 5, that the theme parks will start to be more interactive in real-time rides that are more game-like and reactive to the audience?
Yes. Oh my God, you guys have segued perfectly into what I'm going to talk about now, which is great. So we've partnered with an engineering firm, and we started looking at what could be potential different ride offerings. And I'm again going to kind of mime some of these. So the first one that we can talk about is the reaction coaster. So what we want to do is we want to merge these sort of motion-controlled games that you might have standing in front of a flat wall to what that could be like if you are traveling on a roller coaster past a screen, and we get the entire car doing Dance Dance Revolution. And whoever is dancing and everybody meets the exact same stuff and we hit all of the right scores, then that can actually change the direction of the coaster, or it could change the speed. So we want to have you dynamically controlling the ride vehicle as much as possible, again, with just only kind of doing these gesture controls. A lot of this was also originally concepted to be for like shopping malls and other mixed case uses, where you might fly through a store, or I think one of the other options was like, a miniature golf place where you might also be going around the track. And so as you're doing things, you might trigger the Spanish galleon that somebody is trying to hit their little miniature golf thing up the plank. I don't know how Spanish galleons work, onto the boat. Maybe you come by and you've done something and you've hit a certain score and the cannon goes off, and then that means that they couldn't get their little miniature golf ball up into the Spanish galleon. Like, we're trying to find ways to sort of not only make sure that you're interacting with the ride and changing the ride, but then you're also changing things that are outside of just this and changing the environment that you're in. And I kind of also talked about how we were changing the setting and the time of day with a lot of our media. But these days we can also tap into live data feeds so that we can change those visuals dynamically, and we can say, like, not only is it golden hour, but it's raining. And, how does that also change what the media could be? Which is pretty cool. And then what else have we got? I've got some props that are going to feed into this in a great
Cool.
moment. So we have another one. It's called Tower Battle. And this is 2 drop towers that are going to be on either side. And again, it's the same kind of thing. It's all going to be a lot of gesture controls, or maybe various input devices that you might have, not just playing the bongos, but, other stuff. And your input will then affect the other team's drop tower. So maybe you guys need to work in concert. The other thing is we're going to put like a translucent screen in between the two of you. So this whole crew of 30 people on either drop tower might be playing like Super Mario, but then if your Luigi is doing better than their Super Mario, then they might drop, or they might level down, and you might, get various things. Or the two groups might have to work together. And if we get up to a certain height, that triggers something that the other team avoids. Or maybe that screen is playing out, instead of it being, retro arcade-like, maybe that's like a snowman throwing snowballs at you. And your team has to figure out how to like pull a rope that's in front of you to then move up or down so that you avoid the snowballs that are getting thrown at your team. But again, it's kind of like this goal-based orientation, and then, trying to also add in a little bit of story where we can, but also just trying to make this a lot more of a social component as well. And here we go. There's the one where I get to bring in my prop. The other thing that's quite cool is Disney's got these magic bands at Disney World. This one's mine, although I think it's dead now. These have NFC and RFID inside of them. And a lot of the rides also put in NFC into, like, what's a good example? It's a Small World, has it in the boats. So if I'm riding the ride and I've got my arm on the boat, they know that Amanda is in the boat. And beforehand, I got to put, and I don't know if you guys can see it, there's a code on the back of it.
Hmm.
That code goes into my Disney app, so they know that Amanda is from London and she speaks English. So Small World will say, Amanda, thanks for, have a great day. Thanks for joining in English. But if somebody came from Portugal, it will be in Portuguese, or it might be something else, because they know that I'm there and not Adam from Los Angeles. So that's pretty cool. So we're starting to see a lot more of this. But what we're also hoping to do is to be able to push more data to this device. So if Adam and I were on different teams and we got different scores and I scored better than him, because of course I did, that would be pushed to my device. Mm-hmm. And then as we were walking around together throughout the day, I'm going to cue the Stormtrooper helmet behind you. A Stormtrooper could come up and say, hey, Adam, so-and-so did better than you. Why didn't you score the same ride on Smuggler's Run? That kind of thing. So you can have a different interaction that lasted beyond the 5-minute experience, and that could continue throughout the day.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Plus, it's also feeding into the competitive nature in us all, as well as the idea of, I reached a level that is secret, and I saw this Easter egg that maybe not a lot of other people got to experience. So that's a pretty exciting realm that we're also starting to try and evolve into.
Sounds like it's even evolving from just like experience design to community building. You're creating shared experiences and stuff that people are going to vlog about later when they get home. And
yeah. And that's why I think, I kind of got a lot of people asking me why the theme park industry is so relevant with VR becoming more of a popular mainstay in people's homes. And I think that's it. I think, there's only, there's these kinds of experiences you can really only have when you're in a theme park with other people. And there are other options that can appear and change to you. That Stormtrooper just might have happened to have been there at that one time. And it will change if you and I go on a Tuesday or a Thursday, or if we go back the following year. And I'm never going to get my dad to wear a VR headset. But if he pays $100 to go to Disneyland with me and he's invested in the day, I'm going to have a much greater chance of getting him to try this new technology and try this new way of experiencing a social network than if we were at home sitting on my couch. Like, he would just kind of push it away. So I think this is also a way that you can kind of experience things through multiple demographics as well, which is pretty good. So the only other one that I wanted to talk about is kind of an extension on what we've already said, and that's this is the last one, I promise, because I hear my voice is starting to go away a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's called the Adventure Machine, and if you think about a choose your own adventure book, we want you to do the same thing. So it's going to have an input device of some kind. In my video, it's a laser gun, because everybody seems to like laser guns, and we are all shooting zombies. And if the car shoots more zombies on the right, we travel down to the right-hand side, and it's still a dark ride, so there's still, external components on the walls that'll change, but a different scene will play out for us on the right than if we move to the left. And that will continue to filter and branch as we go. But the thing that could happen is maybe if one of us shot a canister on the left and that created an explosion and we traveled left, we would see the result of that explosion. We'd see the fire as we moved around the corner. So not only are we're no longer having an option of just A or B, but the content can change based on how we got there, which is pretty cool. And, we're kind of hoping to add in more interactivity than just the laser gun, like maybe, the bongo playing button mashing. Motion Leap allows us to do a lot of sword play or magic wand kind of stuff. But to be honest, people just love shooting things. So we have a lot of shooting gun games.
Yeah. That's kind of the Occam's razor, isn't it?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess all these rides that I'm talking about, like they've got one major primary goal, and that's utilizing advancements in the real-time technology partnered with what visual effects workflows and stylings can bring in, as well as creating these adaptable narratives driven by the audience. What we really want is we want a story of the audience's own creation. We want it to be unique to every single person that experiences them. And we want it to be a takeaway that will last beyond just 5 minutes. We want this to stay with them not only throughout their whole day, but theme parks are memory builders. This is where people take their children for the first time to have a day out, and they save for ages to be able to go and just see Mickey Mouse for 1 minute. So we want this to not only be something that you experience for one day, but also that you remember for the rest of your life, and you retell this story about what a great day that you had. In film, I know that my film is going to get remembered, but maybe only for like a year, and then people are going to kind of forget about it a little bit. Or you might go like, "Oh, Avatar, you worked on that Avatar." It's like, yeah, so did like 1,000 other people. But sure, there's one memory recall in my IMDb that people will go, "Oh, you worked on that one." For these rides need to last for more than 20 years, and thousands of people are going to ride them every single day and see your work every single day. And like I said, people are saving for years to be able to go for one day, and then that's gonna be a part of their family history. That one holiday where we went to this theme park for years to come, and we don't take that lightly. We really want to make sure that this is always about the audience having the best experience. And if there's ever a moment where we're doubtful about if anything that we're, if I go, do I go with Houdini 14.5 or 14.6? And what are the differences? At the end of the day, it's like, are you having fun? Is this ride going to be fun? And is this all going to be in support of that fun? So yeah, there you go. Diatribe off. And we want to have fun. We want big, brashy, bright visuals that are weird and different, and we use any tool in the shed that will make that happen. And frequently it's never the same combination of tools, which I love. And it's borrowing from every single different pipeline that you can imagine. And either from games or from visual effects, where there's loads. We did like a mirror maze as well. So we had to call up a guy that had done a mirror maze because we had never done one of those before. So it's always going to be different. And everything that you learn, both at Gnomon and from your friends and from every single project, is going to feed into how to make these rides and experiences better. And just keep learning from everybody else. Like, just keep hearing what the guys doing real time are doing. Keep hearing what the guys doing installs for more location-based and installation-based media, because all of that is starting to come together and become a lot more fluid. Just like Mandalorian, but like every single ride is borrowing from all of those different fields.
My imagination's just going right now. Everything you shared.
I didn't have the pictures, so you have to use
you did great. You're a great storyteller. And I think one of the things, a few really, really big takeaways for me right away are like, number one, I would love to visit a theme park with you, because I can tell that you love this. You 100% love it. Your passion for what you do has definitely come across in the stream today. At one point, when you were talking about the battling tower rides, like I was thinking, wow, a competitive, Tetris game with a translucent screen. All the, because you took us to Nintendo Land. But yeah, I think it's like VFX meets Disney's Imagineers, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, well, we do work a lot with the Imagineers from time to time. I kind of want to reiterate, I don't do the engineering. I don't build the track. I build the visuals and work with the person who builds the track. So we do work a lot with the Imagineers. So anything that they maybe don't want to do, are unable to do in-house. Guardians of the Galaxy is a good one. It's like we rendered Rocket Raccoon for tons of movies. We knew how to do that. So it made sense for them to go, here's a ride with Rocket Raccoon. Go make him be snarky for all of us. And so then we would just keep talking to them about like, how far do you want to take this? Where do you want to go? And so they would kind of be our directors for this ride, rather than having like a film director that you would answer to with maybe a visual effects soup on that side. We've got the same thing that's on the client side. You know, they still want to make sure that we're being authentic to the IP that they've given us. And they also need to make sure that it blends in with it contextually everything else that's going on in the land. We can help with that, loads. We can help with, sometimes we do make requests for them to make t-shirts and various things. We're like, this could be fun. Make this t-shirt. Make this squishy thing. And then sometimes they do it and sometimes they're like, no, shut up. So that's, you know, it is sort of a symbiotic relationship throughout that, which is cool. And what's nice is there's a lot of clients who maybe don't know visual effects that well, so they do rely on us a lot to help with that storytelling element and help be able to reach a certain quality level as well. I think before people kind of might have gone like, oh, you know, media rides, they're very, very low quality, and you'd be right. But they're getting much, much better. And I think over the past 10 years, you've probably seen this, especially over the past like 2 or 3, we've seen this huge uptick in quality overall. And we've also got an audience that's really savvy in visual effects now. You know, there are 10-year-old kids who know Rocket Raccoon inside and out. And if you don't have him looking in the ride like he does on the movie, that 10-year-old kid is going to be disappointed. So we've got to make sure that we're making sure that the Marvel IPs or any other IP that you've seen on screen is matching that same quality level for the guests that come and experience. Because they want to be in that world. They will, you know, it's like the Avatar thing. Like, you want to fly a Banshee. That is what you wanted to do from the moment you saw the film. And if the quality isn't there, then you just leave disappointed. Like, I could have had this in my imagination 10 times better than what was made here for me. And we don't want that. We don't want that disappointment level for them. So we push as much quality as humanly possible into these rides, if not more so sometimes than the films that we do, because it's got to be all around you. So, you know, you get these 360 experiences rather than a slice of that screen sometimes.
Yeah, it's immersion on the next level. I mean, even in games which are interactive and immersive, you're still, the expectation is I'm playing this on a particular platform, on a particular console, but I'm still in my living room in front of my television or whatever it is. Whereas you're immersing someone, but you are needing to 100% suspend disbelief on every level. So I think that's the aspect of it that just sounds amazing to me. And I think also, I would imagine, yeah, of course you're not doing the physical engineering part, but you're augmenting what they do. And so you're problem solving in a very different way, it would seem, than you might on a game or on a film, when it comes to the kind of content you're creating.
For sure. There's lots of things that we've had to take into consideration about, like, you know, I told you about the Twilight motorcycle game. It's like, well, what if somebody just doesn't want to play? Then what happens? Then what do we do?
Right.
And, you know, then how do we still kind of not shut the ride down, but at the same time, so we've got like a non-player mode where if somebody just folds their arms, they still get to experience the same thing, but it's kind of like in a toned down mode. But, you know, it's the same thing. Like, I'm sure lots of people have been in the Haunted Mansion when the dune buggies stop and it's like, the ride will be back up shortly. You can't just stop the media. Like, you can't have a fish that's swimming across in the Jurassic World and all of a sudden the fish stops. Like, that stops your world building and that pulls you out of the suspended disbelief. So we have to like have these keep alive animations that keep going through, and we have to find ways to make sure that if you stop at any point in time, the world doesn't stop for you. Screens don't go black. So you're constantly thinking about those what if scenarios rather than just make a media that works within this 2 minutes. It's like, well, what if that 2 minutes is 2 minutes 30? What if it's less? What if it's something else? And how do you still convey the right story elements within that time frame? So there's a lot more if then scenarios than I'm used to.
Yeah. Well, and I just think the person that folds their arms, they should be the first one to get attacked by a vampire. They just become an NPC right away.
They can't hang out with us, Adam. They can't hang out with us.
And then when you leave the ride, somehow, park officials have sequestered them away, and they don't leave the ride with you, and that just expands the ride experience because now your friend is really gone.
Your band. Yeah. Your band is your walk of shame around the park. I love that idea.
We're just about at time. We have time for just one more question that's come through the chat in a few different ways. I think it's a really practical question. Given the uniqueness of what you're doing in the VFX field and the kind of experiences that you're designing, what could be some of the aspects that you might be looking for in people that would be applying to a place like Framestore to do the kind of work that you're doing?
Passion. I think so. Our rides team isn't a body of artists. We are a small group of supervisors that are ride supervisors. And then we grow and expand our team depending on what that ride system is going to be. So if I've got a ride that's going to be VR, I'm going to the VR team and I'm taking a number of artists that are within that. Now, that being said, if I know that there is a modeler who hasn't worked on a ride, but he really loves Disney, I'm going to find a way to get him on my team. So I don't think that you need to necessarily position yourself just to work in rides. Go out, experience, learn as much as you can, be in the industry. And if your group happens to have a rides team or you want to work for someone that has rides, just make that passion known. And then usually we'll find ways to get you into that group. It's a very selfish thing of me. I know that if you're really passionate and you want to join the team, I know that you're also going to work really hard because you want to be with us and you want to prove that we should keep you and use you in more stuff. So it's kind of a symbiotic thing. Like I know that I'm going to get a better artist because they're more engaged in what the final delivery product is going to be.
Yeah, no, it totally makes sense. So it sounds like you
learn everything.
Your art directors, your recruiters, you're not just looking specifically within theme park niches. You're looking if you're working on a Harry Potter ride, you're looking for a modeler or an animator that is super passionate about the IP.
We don't have job boards that are just for rides. Our job board is still going to say, looking for a modeler with X experience and ZBrush and this and that. Pluses would be likes dinosaurs and theme park rides.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, this has been super fun. Just this conversation in and of itself has been kind of its own little ride, its own little journey. I feel like I'm a part of the Amanda team now. Okay. Now that we finished the ride. Thank you so much for sharing your passion with us in a very articulate way. And again, sorry we weren't able to include the visuals, but I think that you've done a brilliant job of giving us a narrative that we all were able to understand and buy into for sure.
If any of you guys have any more questions, just feel free to, find me on, I'm a Pixel Pixie on basically everything. Find me there. I'll answer any more questions that you have, and I'll try to point you in the direction of more visuals that will explain these certain things. If I didn't do a good enough job miming.
You can definitely add mimistry to your CV.
I will.
Anyway. Streamed mimistry. Once again, thank you so much to Amanda for joining us today, for taking us on her journey, as well as opening up hopefully some new understanding and the idea of some new fields for VFX artists. On this stream, I also wanted to mention our upcoming events. I'm going to be interviewing our director of placement at Gnomon, Shannon Wiggins, this Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time. And the stream is going to be called How to Land Your Dream Job Directly Out of School. And we're going to be hearing about how she coaches Gnomon students into the careers that they find once they finished their education with us. I want to give special thanks again to Amanda Johnstone-Batt for being with us. I'd also like to thank Miranda Harrington, Gnomon's event coordinator, for taking care of production today, especially with all of the crazy things that the internet was throwing at us today. Thank you very much, Miranda, for working with us and helping us out. Once again, I'm Adam Hartel, and I look forward to seeing you again here on the Gnomon live stream.